Hi everyone, I'm glad you're here. Thank you very much for joining me. With the talk of another world war starting, people have no idea what's coming. The younger generation is not taught what happened during the last two world wars. I don't even think our older politicians even remember what it was like back then during the Second World War. So I was going to do a recap on the rationing that was going on during the Second World War, starting with 1942, when the United States joined into the battle against Germany and Japan. Hard to believe, but I was only born 9 years after the war ended in 1945. And there was a lot going on not even I knew. When I was in grade school, we were taught about different battles and things like that, but the rationing wasn't really talked about. We all know how hard it hurt everybody when gas prices went sky high. Biden, when he took office, decided he was going to shut down the coal industry, the mining, and the production of gas, oil. Those two commodities are what actually helped us win the war against both Germany and Japan. Many of the areas that both Germany and Japan took over were for production of things that were needed for the war, being fuel and rubber. The United States became one of the leading exports, in fact, was the leading export to help the Allies win the war in sending them oil and gas. The United States produced over 59% of the world's oil production during World War II. When Germany was defeated in North Africa and Russia by the mid-1943, Hitler's dream of capturing the oil fields of Baku and the Caucasus was now a fantasy. Germany then faced a huge fuel crisis and turned to focus on coal, making synthetic oil production from their abundant coal resources. They invented the hydrogenization, sorry for pronouncing that wrong, method to produce high-grade liquid fuel from coal. Today, thousands of different products have coal or coal byproducts as components, such as soap, aspirin, solvents, dyes, plastics, and fibers, such as rayon and nylon. So you kind of think of a backup of a backup. When you don't have oil, you got coal, and both those things Biden is shutting down. The last I heard, if we suddenly needed to go into our oil reserves, which is supposed to be for an emergency, we only have 17 days of oil stored in our reserves currently. In July of 1942, the population of the United States was 134 million people. Today, we are 331 million people, 3 times as many people. During World War II, most of the labor unions adhered to a no-strike pledge during that time. Rationing had already begun for different food products, gasoline, rubber, sugar, and I'll go more into that in a minute. But what happened was the president of the United Mine Workers, UMW, told President Franklin D. Roosevelt that his men were working under unfair conditions and would not be bound by any such pledge, despite President Roosevelt's appeal to miners to keep up coal production. So in April of 1943, 500,000 miners went on strike. Then on May 1st, 1943, the president issued an executive order, 9340, which placed coal mines under the control of the federal government. They took over the businesses. Yeah, there was many other businesses back then that the U.S. government took over. Coal was critical to the war effort. As one of the largest raw material industry, coal was used to power locomotives, produce iron, steel, and electricity, and keep America homes warm in the winter. I remember my grandmother had a coal chute. I think both of them actually had coal chutes in their homes. The building that I live in now and the one next door still had the door for the coal chute. And even today, we still have a lot of power plants that run on coal. So the federal government came in and took over the coal mines because the workers refused to go back to work. I don't know who they got to work the coal mines back then, but this here is an image that a poster that the coal mine put out during that time. It says, give them the stuff to fight with, sacrifice for freedom. These are things that I'm telling you about because they will happen again if we go to another world war. Back on May 6, 1943, the U.S. government Congress made it a crime to instigate a strike in war plants or mines that had been taken over by the government. Those who challenged it were prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. President Roosevelt threatened to call out the troops unless the miners returned to work, but miners merely shrugged their shoulders and proclaimed what would become of their classic phrase, "You can't dig coal with bayonets." Nowadays, many of the tires for bicycles and cars and trucks are made from synthetic material, which, yeah, a lot of it comes from coal. I have a list here of the dates and what things were rationed and when. Tires back then because they were made from rubber, and the Japanese had taken over all the rubber plants, the plantations. That began in January of 1942, and the rationing continued until 1945. All these ended in 1945. Cars, because of the metal, that began in February of 1942. Bicycles, 1942. Gasoline was rationed. Gasoline back then in 1942 was 20 cents per gallon. A ration card for Class A drivers was only 3 gallons per week. Now, if you were considered a necessary worker, such as a doctor, a nurse, someone in the government, or you were a truck driver delivering goods, you were able to get a different class of gas rationing card. So you were only allowed to have 3 gallons of gas. Could you do that nowadays, having only 3 gallons of gasoline rationed to you per week? Although rationing was an important part of life for America during World War II, the government was apprehensive about gasoline rationing. As a symbol of freedom of movement, the automobile represented everything to Americans, and politicians feared riots and rebellions if they curtailed that freedom. I bet you didn't know that in the early 1942, German U-boats ravaged Allied shipping off the East Coast and the Gulf of Mexico. Oil tankers were their favorite targets. The Allies needed oil for airplanes, ships, tanks, and to run factories, and the Germans hoped to cut off the supply. It didn't take long for a gasoline shortage to develop on the U.S. East Coast. On April 9, 1942, gasoline deliveries were decreased to 17 eastern states, but to ensure fairness, rationing was required. On May 15, 1942, 8 million motorists in those 17 states registered for gas rationing cards, and rationing began on the East Coast in July the 22nd, 1942. On December 1st, 1942, a nationwide victory speed, as they call it, where you could only go 35 miles an hour, was instituted. Since higher speeds removed tread more quickly, lightweight victory bicycles were introduced on March of 1942. But the bicycles were rationed to war workers and certain professionals, like I said, nurses, doctors, people like that. And this was only when public transportation wasn't available and all other bicycle production ceased. People were encouraged to use public transportation and their own 2 feet. Commuters were told to carry more to win, meaning more people, and to share rides or form car clubs. Car manufacturing was stopped on January 1st, 1942, and no new automobiles could be purchased after February 22nd, 1942. Auto manufacturers converted their assembly lines to produce Jeeps, tanks, and bombers. Car theft became a larger problem than ever, probably for parts, or just because they were tired of walking or their car broke down. Look at all the carjackings that are happening now. Can you imagine what that would be like today with a population that is 3 times as many people as what was, here in the United States back then, compared to 1942? Automobile production was not allowed again, and the first car that came off the assembly line was not until August 30th, 1945. That is 3 years where everything was shut down. On their windshield was stickers that said either A, B, or C. A, motorists were given 3 gallons a week, and that was even reduced in March 22nd of 1944 to just 2 gallons a week. The B sticker was for war workers who shared rides with 3 or more passengers. They were allowed 8 gallons a week. Cars with the C sticker were considered essential occupation use, such as doctors, priests, and mail carriers. There was a D for motorcycles, but I couldn't find anything about that. E was for emergency vehicles such as ambulances, police, fire, and they were allowed to have unlimited amount of gas. I wonder how much was siphoned out of their tanks and taken home. The letter T was put on trucks. That was instituted in January 1st of 1944, and they were allowed unlimited supply of gasoline. And then stickers with an X, that was for VIPs. Very important people, probably congressmen, senators, governors, mayors, people like that. When they pulled into the gas station, the attendant checked the windshield sticker and took the required number of ration book coupons, also marked with an appropriate letter, but they still had to pay about 20 cents per gallon. Here's a sticker that was put in the window for truck drivers. And I don't know if I can read this. It says, this sticker must be applied to the vehicle only in that location, which components with, or I don't know, something with the state. And it says here 1942. Despite rationing, a serious gas shortage developed early in 1944. The high military use and restricted shipping contributed to this problem. In January of 1944, on the West Coast, very little gasoline was available, and none at all in some towns and cities. The black market became quite profitable. Cases of gas siphoning made the front page of some small town newspapers, and several ration books forgery rings were broken up. Here's another image of a gas ration card. How do you think people would put up with that? So going back to the list of things that were rationed, fuel oil and kerosene, October 1942. Solid fuels, I don't know. That could be coal, I don't know. September 1943. You couldn't buy a new stove. They didn't have electric back then, so it would probably be wood or coal, I don't know. Shoes. I remember my mother talking about how 1 year, because you were only allowed 1 pair of shoes a year, and that included children. Rubber footwear, October 1942. Regular shoes, February of 1943. My mother complained that her siblings got a new pair of shoes 1 year and she didn't. Sugar, okay, if you want to know about what kind of food that was first rationed. Sugar, number 1. That was in 1942. Then came coffee. Okay, a lot of these things were being imported. If they were sinking U-boats off the East Coast in the Gulf of Mexico, Yeah, they're probably getting other boats. Yeah, think about your coffee. That was November 1942. Processed foods, that would be probably canned foods, I imagine. Meats were rationed. Let me bring this up if I can. And fish. March of 1943. Cheese, canned milk, and fats. My grandmother, to get butter, knew someone who had some cows across the border in Michigan. And she would go over there, probably trade or barter, and she would get milk and butter from that farm. And typewriters. Yeah, I just ordered a typewriter online through Amazon because I am fed up with these printers that don't work once the ink cartridges run out, and I replace the ink cartridge and it still don't work. So I have actually ordered me a typewriter with 3 extra rolls of ribbon. Oh, I also want to mention, you know, we got these sanctions on Russia and it's hurting our fertilizer that we use for growing crops. Well, evidently they make fertilizer from coal. I've heard other channels talk about the rationing and the coming rationing. But most of the rationing happened because it was being used to feed the soldiers overseas. This here is a one for chocolate and cocoa. Let me bring this down a little bit. Yeah, chocolate is fighting food, it says. And you think about all our products that have sugar in them. Think of your cereals. Holy cow. For the home rationing, it was 2 pounds per month. That's a lot, but you know, they would make bread from different things like that. Now, how would they impose rationing today? Well, they would have the digital currency that they've been talking about coming out. They keep pushing the date back. I heard maybe another 3 months. Well, whenever they come out with a digital currency, you know war is here, because that is exactly how they would enforce the rationing. Here's another one for heating your home. Fuel oil. I imagine it was also used for cooking. 11 gallons from September 30th. It says period 1 coupon and new ration good for 10 gallons each through January. Yeah. I'm not sure what state or where this was, but here it says you can, for the A sticker on your car, you got 4 gallons. Never buy ration goods without ration stamps. Never pay more than the legal price. I don't know how you would know what was legal price. When you have used rations, salvage the tin cans and waste fat. They are needed to make munitions for our fighting men. Cooperate with your local savage community. And this was 1943. Where I was saying there was a shortage of butter, and here it says how to make delicious sandwiches without butter. Different kinds made without butter. Cheese spread, cheese and Worcestershire sauce. And this was an ad for, let me bring it down, Kraft cheddar. This younger generation, a lot of people don't know how to make bread from flour. It says here, save the wheat, help the fleet, eat less bread. Yeah, this is what they thought of preppers back then, but back then they weren't preppers. It says here, are you breaking the law? Now this is from the Canadian Food Board order. It's, you know, shows them with their bags of flour, and it says, patriotic Canadians will not hoard food. This here kind of reminds me of them telling us you'll own nothing and be happy, and it's about spending money on things that you shouldn't back then. It says, I'm doing a bit of shopping this afternoon. This is where I come from, you know, the little bug. Spend it here. Prices are fantastic. I don't suppose it's worth half the money, and it doesn't help the war a bit. Let me bring this down, and it says, don't take the squander bug when you go shopping. Another poster for the squander bug. It says, here he comes with extra pay this week. Let's blow some money on a bit of trash. Of course, it's not worth it, but isn't it fun to spend? Sold again and got the money. Notice the little bugs got little Nazi signs. Wanted for sabotage. The squander bug, alias Hitler's pal, known to be at large in certain parts of the kingdom, usually found in the company of useless articles that has a temptation, leer, and flattering manner. Wanted. Let's bring this down. Also for the crime of shopper's disease. Information concerning this pest should be reported to, I don't know who. Another one. Don't waste bread. Let me bring this up here. It says, save 2 slices every day and defeat U-boats. And then, of course, there was the war bonds. I remember, my mom taking me to the bank and buying savings bonds, which was another version of war bonds. This one was for Australia. And this one was for Canada. Dominion of Canada War Loan, it says. That would have to probably be the First World War. It says 1925 on it. Another one from Canada, Victory Bonds. You were encouraged and pressured if you had any extra money and even take money out of your paycheck to buy war bonds. This is probably Canada, and they called it Victory Bonds. Yeah. If you didn't have a certain portion of your money taken out of your paycheck, yeah, you were shunned. Yeah, how can you save on gas when you want to plow the fields? Well, you get 3 women out there to... yeah. History has a way of repeating itself. How can I serve Canada? Buy Victory Bonds, it says. Another propaganda poster. I'm out to lick runaway prices. Let's all follow the 7 key plans to hold down prices. Let me make this bigger and I'll pull it down. Buy and hold war bonds. Pay willingly our share of taxes. Provide adequate life insurance and saving for our future. Reduce our debt as much as possible. Buy only what we need and make what we have last longer. Follow ration rules and price ceilings. Cooperate with our government wage stabilization program. I don't see a date on this poster. And it says victory. Yeah, I've often talked about the victory gardens. See, it'd be so much harder. They didn't have fresh vegetables and things like that were being rationed because they expected most people to grow that stuff. And if you didn't sign up to fight in the war, it says here, if you can't go across, means over there in Europe, buy war bonds. Don't let that shadow touch them. Buy war bonds. And they got the shadow of the Nazis on the ground behind the children. I don't know when I found this image, but like I said, history repeats itself. Ministry of Finance to Ukraine. Ukraine issues military domestic government bonds. Support Ukraine and the Ukrainian army. They actually had groups of people going door to door, encouraging people to buy war bonds. Yeah, you got so many stamps, and once your book was filled up, then you got the bond. This is one of the images, propaganda for the Victory Garden. Uncle Sam says, garden to cut food costs. U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington, D.C. Yeah. You know, when I had my dinky little garden trashed by my landlord, of all people. And I thought about this. And, yeah, if it had happened during this era, he would be probably labeled very unpatriotic to have vandalized my garden. This poster comes from Minnesota Food will win the war. If I can bring this up. No. So if we do go to war, being a prepper, buying things ahead of time, will not make you a target, maybe. Less people would take notice that you have stocked up. Yeah, how tough it was back then during World War II. And like I said, most people did have a garden. I mean, there was only 134 million people here in the United States in 1942 compared to the 331 million people that we got now. Do you think they're going to go for rationing of food or gasoline or heat for their homes? Did you know that nylon and rayon, different materials are actually produced from coal? Plastics? Yeah, I think of parachutes and all the plastics in those drones that we're making. The U.S. government wants thousands upon thousands of drones within 18 to 24 months for a war that they say, yeah, with China, that's probably coming. I did an article about that yesterday, I believe it was. So, what is your thoughts? Yeah, put those comments down below. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, make sure you're still subscribed, and I'll talk to you later.